So hello and welcome to Media MD. I'm Reuben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot and Reuben.
Awesome. And so on Media MD, each fortnight we prescribe each other a piece of media that the other person has somehow missed out on. Mm-hmm. And so this week it's my turn. I am coming to you with a movie called Reservoir Dogs by Quentin Tarantino.
Yes.
So I don't know where to start with this one.
I'll just sort of jump in and sort of set the scene because I think most people would sort of assume that anyone has seen most of the Tarantino films.
Yeah.
I have seen Inglourious Bastards, which I hated.
Okay.
And then I saw Django Unchained a few years ago, and I enjoyed that one. I guess I don't know. I don't know what may have happened because everyone else tells me Inglourious Bastards is great. Mm-hmm. So. Maybe I was just in the wrong mood when I went and saw it in the cinema all those years ago.
Before we get to Reservoir Dogs, let's talk about why you didn't like Inglourious Basterds, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't really have any expectations going in. It was like a friend took me there. And
that was the first Tarantino movie.
Yeah. So I had literally no expectations going in, and I mean it was like sort of gory and grotesque, which I kind of liked, but like the whole thing just didn't make sense to me in a way. Like it was just like. It's particularly the end, so spoilers for Inglourious Bastards, when they sort of killed Hitler at the end. Yeah. For me, that sort of meant the whole movie. I don't know, the whole thing.
It just made the whole movie kind of fictitious and weird.
And it was sort of a series of random events. I didn't really feel like the movie was cohesive.
Yes.
I don't know, but in saying this, I think this was like 7 or 8 years ago that movie came out. Yeah. So I don't remember it that well. I just remember coming out and not being impressed.
So, speaking on Tarantino films, I've seen... I think all the ones that he's done up to Inglourious Basterds, and then I haven't seen past that.
Okay.
So I haven't seen his newer films, which is a weird dynamic. We meet at Inglourious Basterds, and then we kind of diverge, I guess. But for me, Inglourious Basterds is definitely kind of larger than life in a way that in a way that Reservoir Dogs definitely isn't. Maybe some of his other movies, like Kill Bill, the Kill Bill movies, are a bit kind of like that.
That's the yellow jumpsuit one.
That's the yellow jumpsuit. That's Uma Thurman going around with a ninja sword slicing up people. Yep.
That's literally all I know about it.
Yep. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a pretty simple movie, so that's basically all you need to know about it. But Reservoir Dogs, I think, doesn't kind of fit into that in the same way. It's much more down to earth, I would describe it as.
Okay.
Yeah. So Reservoir Dogs is the title of this movie.
Yes.
How much do you know about it?
Literally nothing.
Okay, so just from the title alone, what do you think is the movie about?
So I'm assuming like all the Tarantino films are sort of these live action.
Yeah, okay. It's definitely not animated.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm picturing like All Dogs Go to Heaven style, but it wouldn't be that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's an animated movie about a dog who finds love with a young child.
Yeah, I don't know, in some reservoir setting. I honestly have absolutely no idea. I assume it's going to be some sort of gang / mafia based thing, but I think that could just be an assumption I'm making because it's Tarantino.
Yeah. Well, you're correct. It is about, I don't think it's a mafia, but it's a criminal kind of group.
Okay.
But let me tell you the story about how I came up with the title. So I was looking this up because, of course, the title is... It's nonsensical, essentially. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't correlate to the film at all. So I think the story is he was working in a Blockbuster or some video store, and he would recommend indie titles. This is Tarantino. He would recommend indie titles to patrons who would come in.
Sure.
And so he recommended a French film called Les Reservoirs des Enfants, or something, which means like... The Reservoir of the Children? I'm not 100% sure, but the customer replied, I don't want no damn Reservoir Dogs, and Tarantino liked this, and that's where he got the idea for it. And that's it. That's the story of
Thank you, ignorant redneck.
Yes. So it doesn't really make sense. It's not really a thing at all,
that's
either in the real world or in the movie. So let's talk about what this movie is about.
Yeah.
Now, since it is more down to earth, it's not really... I'd say it's different to other Tarantino, or different to Inglourious Basterds, which you've seen for sure, where it's not really... Inglourious Basterds is kind of like, you kind of know what the story is going to be. They're killing Nazis, they're going to kill Hitler or whatever. And the story's kind of laid out in front of you, and it's more about the journey of how they get there. Whereas I feel like Reservoir Dogs kind of isn't about that. It's more, you don't know what's going to happen at any point in the movie.
Okay.
It's pretty... It's violent like other Tarantino films, and it takes some weird turns, and you definitely don't know exactly where it's going to go. you kind of know a bunch of pieces and you're kind of seeing how they're going to play together, but you don't really know exactly.
So there's a
where
bit
it's
of
gonna
like
end.
a mystery to it all.
I wouldn't say it's a mystery because there's nothing that you as the viewer don't really know, but apart from, you know, how the story is going to play out. It's not quite a mystery. It's more just a story that takes its turns, you know?
Okay.
So I don't want to give away too much about the movie, but there are a couple of very iconic scenes that you probably will recognize. There's a scene where someone gets their ear cut off and it's set to one of the characters plays Stuck in the Middle with You on a radio or tunes a radio and is playing this song. And that's kind of a very iconic scene that you might recognize even. It's been parodied in a lot of things. I remember there's a scene in, I think, Bob's Burgers where Bob gives a wet willy to someone in their ear and it's set to the tune of Stuck in the Middle.
So that may have just gone over my head when I was
watching. Of course. So there are a lot of references which, when you see these original things and then see the later piece, you'll be like, oh my god, this is obviously a reference to Reservoir Dogs.
Okay.
So the movie has a bunch of staples for Tarantino, like Tim Roth is in it. He's in a lot of Tarantino's films.
Yeah.
It's violent, of course. It gets pretty gruesome. I just mentioned the scene where someone gets their ear cut off, which I think is the most violent scene in the movie. But it's definitely a good movie. So I'd like to talk about one of the scenes at the very start of the movie, which kind of sets a weird tone for it. So I wouldn't describe the movie as a comedy. I don't know, the movie is kind of genre defining, but it has this very funny scene at the start of the movie revolving around tipping, right, in America. And so we're both Australians who have spent time living in America, so this is I'd say this scene strikes with me a lot. One of the characters, Steve Buscemi's character, is talking about how tipping is just a bit of a nonsensical thing.
Never
he doesn't want to tip people
agree
just...
with Steve Buscemi.
I mean, we agree with him, I think, on this. In tipping culture in Australia is if you earn a tip, you get a tip, whereas in America it's, you know, we have to pay part of your wage as the customer. And you have to tip. But Steve Buscemi is very against this and is saying, you know, she did an alright job serving us, so why we have to tip her for this amount. And it's a kind of story that it's a scene that sets a very weird tone, and then that tone is kind of broken. So that scene is before the main event in the film, which is these people rob a diamond store. And then the rest of the movie is after that. Basically goes to hell. They fuck up the robbery, the police are involved, and it's all gone to hell, and then they're trying to figure out what exactly happened, and that's the main chunk of the movie there. Okay. Yeah, so I don't think that will spoil too much of it, because that's basically just the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy it. I think you will.
Okay, cool. And so I don't know, so is it just two guys, or... So
the crew is like maybe 8 or 9 people big.
Oh, okay.
And so there are a couple of them. So since the heist has gotten fucked up, I think one of them dies. Some of them like split and don't come back into the story. They don't kind of regroup at the meeting place afterwards. And so there are maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 main characters. I'd say 3 who are pretty core to the story that happens afterwards. And then a couple of other ones which kind of come in. The other kind of group members come in.
Yeah, sure.
And so while the group is about 8 or 9 people, there are maybe like 3 or 4 who come to this warehouse afterwards to try and figure out what went wrong, and then that kind of plays out from there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And we're back. That was a little 2-week past sound effect. Alright.
It's very good.
Alright, let's focus here. Enough shenanigans, and let's focus.
High quality production we've got going on.
I need like a soundboard that will like 2 weeks later. Anyway.
Yeah, so I've watched Reservoir Dogs in the last 2 weeks. It was about a week ago. And I actually really enjoyed this one.
I knew you would.
Compared to what I was saying about like Inglourious Bastards, and even sort of how I felt about Django Unchained, this one felt a lot more indie. Like you could tell it's a very low budget, almost like homemade movie.
Well,
and I felt that was good in that it toned down the Tarantino. Like there was the violence, but like in Inglourious Bastards and Django, I almost felt like the violence was pointless.
Yeah, okay.
Like it was just so much violence and people dying, and like I enjoy action and like gore and stuff, but like. Yeah.
It was gratuitous.
Yeah, and the deaths and stuff, there were only a few characters in Reservoir Dogs, and it was Reservoir Dogs.
And, Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Wogs. And,
that's the children's production version.
But no, wait, so I felt that this one actually was more about the characters and what was happening and the violence was just there to further the plot. Whereas in the new ones, I would say there's interesting plot and characters that get distracted from by the excessive violence.
Okay. So yeah, you did like Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about... What should we talk about with this movie?
Well, so one of the things you talked about last time was how that opening scene in the cafe where they talk about tips,
Yes.
how that had a very different tone to the rest of the movie.
Yes.
And I sort of noticed that, and then after watching it, I really felt, because that scene, when you watch that scene, I got the impression that they were a team that worked together a lot. Mm. It established them to me as a team that got along really well.
They were kind of family figuring.
Excuse me. And so I think that was the point of that scene, is that it establishes them as a sort of like family-ish, a very tight-knit team. And then you immediately cut to seeing it after it's just all gone to shit. Mm. And so it's that, I would think that that's sort of the point of that scene, is to show you how they could all be professional and good when things are right. And then after it had all gone to hell, they're at each other's throats and pointing guns at each other.
Now, I don't remember. Is Tim Roth with them in the cafe scene?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think they're not... I think it's explained in some conversations.
Yeah, they're not a team.
They're not a team.
No.
Together, yeah.
But... like, because it opens with that scene, that was the impression I had watching the movie. They seemed
professional.
Yeah, they seemed like a team.
As Steve Buscemi's character would say many times.
Yes.
He's professional.
Actually, I do want to bring up, this is the first thing I've seen Steve Buscemi in that wasn't an Adam Sandler movie. So I'd like to officially take back all these bad things I've been saying about Steve Buscemi.
He's not just in Adam Sandler movies.
Yeah, see,
He also was in 30 Rock as a very creepy... personal.
That's true, and he was good in that. But I've always had this impression of him as just like someone attributed to Adam Sandler movies. So I've never thought of him. I've never had much respect for him, and I just sort of like to officially.
He knows his shit.
Yeah, I'd like to officially backtrack on all those years of hating Steve Buscemi.
Monsters Inc. He plays the main villain.
He's the bad guy, right?
Yeah, he's Randolph, whatever his name is, the chameleon dude.
Yeah,
he was good in that.
Yeah, okay.
He even looks. Like, if there was a live-action version of Monsters, Inc., he wouldn't really need CGI or anything. You'd just put Steve Buscemi in it.
One of those movies where they did part of the modelling based on the actors who were playing them.
Oh, yeah. Because John Goodman is Sully.
Yeah.
Who plays... Billy Crystal plays Mike Wazowski. You're right, they do kind of look like they're monsters.
Yeah, and I mean, they did a lot of that in Finding Nemo as well, which I think was like the movie afterwards.
No, did they?
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know any of the voice actors from Finding Nemo except Ellen.
I mean, like, you don't really notice it because, they're still fish, right?
Yeah, they're not humans.
And it's the same in Monsters, Inc. But, like, if you really look for it, you can still see that they gave him more bulgy eyes and stuff. And I assume it's because of the actors.
But anyway, enough about an unrelated movie. Let's get back to Reservoir Dogs.
But yeah, and I really liked, the narrative. I really liked the way it unfolded in Reservoir Dogs. It was like this puzzle, like, often I hate it when you get those sorts of plots that like start with the end and it's like 10 hours earlier.
Yeah.
I felt
that's kind of happens in Reservoir
Dogs. And that's normally like, I just sigh when that happens normally because it's such an overused trope. But like the way they sort of kept going back to it was almost like a whole season of Lost compressed into a movie. Like the way they keep going back and you get the snippets of what happened.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to know, like, and yeah, just the way everything was moving, I was really enjoying it.
So let's talk about the ending of the movie.
Yeah.
Which is when
the Shakespearean ending where everyone dies.
yeah, Shakespearean. Yeah, definitely. So Tim Roth has been this undercover cop the whole time.
Yeah.
And essentially... the other guy, Mr. White?
Yeah, Mr. White. And yeah, like
Harvey Keitel's character.
He confesses to him like
at the very end. And he's been going to bat for him and like
exactly
putting his life on the line for him. And then in the end he confesses and he shoots him.
Yeah. I don't know what Mr. Orange expected.
Yeah, Mr. Orange, he definitely was in a... I don't think that was his best decision. But coming from a storytelling perspective, what do you think of the ending? Yeah, I'm just, like it sort of caught me off guard. I actually thought the 1movie had more time to it. It just sort of happened. I thought we were still in the main part of the movie, and then just like, especially the Mexican standoff, I didn't expect that to just sort of go with everyone shoots each other and dies. Yeah. Yeah. And then like you expect that to de-escalate, but it just doesn't. And then they just shoot each other. Mr. Pink is like on his way out, and then he gets caught by the cops straight out the door, and it's just like, well.
okay, everything's over now, and
that kind of just happened. Okay.
Yeah, so it was a very abrupt ending, but I kind of like that because it was unexpected. I was just sort of like, "Whoa, okay."
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What did you think of the movie as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. Like most of it, again, it was like one of those movies that sort of felt like it was filmed in like two rooms.
Yeah, it definitely has that kind of. You were saying it has that kind of indie. I mean, it's obviously not an indie movie by any sense, but.
Well, this was one of his first ones, right?
It was one of his earlier ones.
So I imagine
still
it must
well
have
enough
had,
known.
It must have had one of the smallest budgets for sure. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's no big set pieces or anything like some
exactly
films for sure, but
you often see like
it still has a lot of big stars in it.
They talk about a lot. There's a term for it in TV shows that's slipping my mind, but bottle episode.
Right.
Episode. It kind of felt like a bit of a bottle movie, and I quite liked it. I mean, obviously, bottle episodes are very hit and miss. Like some of them great, some of them not. I would describe this as very much a hit in terms of bottle movies. Like,
but it does go outside the bottle in some ways,
and it does. And a lot of bottle episodes will
have
for bits and pieces.
Okay.
But like you'd say that like 80% of the movie happened in these two locations.
It's that one main room.
Yeah.
Even.
And yet it was still very like captivating.
Now, I remember we were talking about the movie in the preamble section. I was talking about how I think the most violent part is the ear cutting off scene.
Yeah.
I think that would still be the most violent, but I had forgotten, and I rewatched this movie just recently. The scene where Harvey Keitel is driving Mr. Orange, and there is just blood
oozing
everywhere.
Yeah.
It's basically a red leather car.
Right at the start, you're talking about.
Yeah, at the very start. I would say that. I'm changing my mind. I'd say that has the most blood.
Yeah, definitely. I guess you could say it was the goriest, but like the torture scene's the darkest.
The torture scene is
because the blood everywhere. That's what happens when you get shot in the stomach, right?
Yeah,
like, blood goes
makes
everywhere.
sense.
When there's a dude tied to a chair getting his like ear cut off, that's much more disturbing to watch.
So yeah, one more thing I want to point out about the ear scene. Now that you've seen it, is there anything that you can think of that is parodying it? Because that is a very iconic scene.
Yeah, no, like nothing's springing to mind, but I'm sure.
I think after this episode, I'm going to show you the scene from Bob's Burgers. Have you seen Bob's Burgers?
Yeah. I've seen all Bob's Burgers.
So it's the episode. We're just going to go off on a little bit of a sidetrack here, but it's the episode with the food critic. Do you remember that episode?
Oh,
where his friends' restaurants have all been shut down by the food critic, and he wants to, and he breaks into the house and like ties him up.
Yeah,
to feed
he gets them all
meal.
together, right?
Yeah, and then at the end, one of the guys gives him a wet willy, and it's and it's obviously.
I do. Now that you mention it, I do vaguely remember that.
All right, good.
I'm sure
now
it's something.
You know, and that's the entire reason I wanted you to watch this movie, just so you would understand that reference.
And I'm sure there'll be stuff like probably like next time I'm tuning into some South Park or something. I'm sure South Park's done or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember any specifics, but I'm sure from now on I'll definitely recognize it because the music really did make that scene very iconic.
And I think there are probably a lot of iconic scenes in Quentin Tarantino movies. He definitely has a knack for having that kind of... He is often able to set up these very iconic violent scenes that you always kind of remember.
Yeah.
There are probably some that you can think of from Inglourious Basterds and stuff.
Django, like the final few scenes in Django where they go to town on this mansion.
In a
yeah.
sexual way?
No, in a bullets everywhere. Like the foundation's
in a lot of
never going to be the
holes
same.
Kind of way.
In a Samuel L. Jackson is crazy way.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, what would you give it?
Yeah. I'd be tempted to give this one 8.5 out of 10.
That's a high rating.
Yeah. I actually really enjoyed it. Especially given the fact that it came across as quite indie-ish and like low budget. It was sort of
down to earth.
A lot of these guys was getting started here, and it came together really well.
All right, 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Now, before we go, we should point out that we should do some chores, some podcast chores.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
We now have an email
for
the show, which is mediamdpodcast@gmail.com. We have a website. We have a lot of things. So if you want to reach out to the show, you can reach out to the show. And we should also point out that next fortnight we will be discussing Stargate. So if you want to check out Stargate, the TV show /movie/franchise, do that. And we'll see you next fortnight.